So we've opened Lightroom, and we're in Lightroom. This is what you'll see when you first open Lightroom. It is the library folder, and you have your library grid, your navigator, and I'm drawing a blank on what they call this, but you have your histogram, your keywords, and all your metadata stuff over here. This is like information about each image. But you don't have any images in your folder, in your Lightroom yet, right? So let's get some in there. So the first thing we're going to do with your SD card adapter connected to the computer, we're going to import from an SD card. File, import photos. On the left, you have your source, and on the right, you have where it's going. So this is my SD card down here, and over here, I have my computer. And if you see down here in my year 2025, I have an all images folder just like you guys have made in OneDrive, and I have an assignments folder just like you have made in OneDrive. I deliberately have not made a workflow. Well, it's there, but ignore it. I have not made a workflow file inside of this yet because of how I'm going to do this. Okay, so go over here. You're going to want to select the images that you're importing. If you have include all subfolders on, every picture that's on that SD card will just appear. I usually leave this off so I can just go into specific folders. One thing you want to make sure is that up here you have this set correctly. Now, copy as DNG will take these images and copy them over to your computer from your SD card. If they are raw photographs, mine are ARW, which is the raw file format for Sony, it'll copy them and change them to DNG, which is like Adobe's raw format. We won't get too much into that today, but that's what that does. You can just straight up copy your pictures, and a lot of you might be shooting in JPEG. This is how you'd want to do it. You can't move or add for reasons that we'll find out in a minute. But copy is where it should be set. You have your SD card in the right folder, and you're selecting the right images. So it's selecting all of them right now. Let's say I didn't want to select all my pictures. I just wanted to select like 5 good ones. I'm going to uncheck that box, or that checkbox up there, and then I'm going to go ahead and pick some that I like. So if I liked all the first 5, I could just select the first one, and then I could hold down Shift, and that will select them all in a row. But what if I didn't like all the first 5? I just clicked somewhere to get that selection to turn off. Now I'm going to go, I like this first one, I like the second one, but when I click, nope, it doesn't work. I need to hold down Alt or Control. Sorry, Control. Control on my computer will be, I just put it right here, on your Mac because it's different. It's just a difference between our computers. I'm on a PC, you guys are on a Mac. Everything's the same, but the keyboards are different. I don't really know why. It's a Mac thing. So I got 2 selected. I'm going to scroll down. Maybe I love this one. Maybe I want to work on, this one. Once they're selected, they're not ready to be imported yet. You have to check the checkbox. And once you check the checkbox, you'll see it gets a little white border too. So selected with the checkbox, those are ready to be imported. And when you check one of them, it checks all the things that are selected. Okay, so now we're going to go over here. We see file handling. This is where you can set Lightroom to build previews. You can say minimal, standard, 1:1. We'll just leave them at minimal for now. 1:1 would build a preview that's the same size as your image. Smart previews is the only thing that I would maybe turn on, but it really only is good for RAWs. If I just leave it all off, you go down to file renaming, and this is where it's important. And I might make a mistake, but let's try it out. So you're going to want to say you can rename your files. And remember how I was saying you could do all of the renaming in Lightroom and not have to go file by file in your OneDrive? This is how I would do it. You select the custom name and sequence, the custom name and sequence, and then you change your custom name to what I'd prefer is like your name or your first initial, and then your last name, and the assignment. And we're going to say this is a workflow assignment. And then I always put another space so that when the numbers start appearing, you can just kind of have them separated from the words. And now you're going to go down to, I'll show you what apply during import. You can do all these kind of random, they're not random, they're very specific. You can do all these adjustments as you import a picture, but that's not what we're doing. You can add metadata as you import a picture. Say you wanted to say these are all from the river, I could just add river. And then when these come in, they're all going to be marked as river, and I can use that to search later. This is what the most important thing is. Where are your pictures going? They're going to go into your OneDrive. So let's just imagine that this 2025 is OneDrive. Okay. So you're going to go into your OneDrive, find that. And where I would put your pictures when you import is in the All Images folder. So all your pictures can go into that All Images folder. If you want to make folders within that folder, you can go up here and check include subfolder, and I already have workflow written, and you'll see that it makes a folder called workflow. You can do that, or you can just dump them all in there, whatever you want to do, and I'm not worried about it. So I'm going to go ahead and make a folder within my All Images folder called workflow, and then I'm going to import. And for you, this will be, when you do assignments, this will be all 24 pictures that you take. That was pretty quick because I was importing 4. So now, or 5, sorry. So now we have all pictures in there. And let's back up, and I'm gonna pause this, and we're gonna look at another way to import things if you already have everything inside of Lightroom. So if you already have your folder structure built in OneDrive, there's no need to import, and you already have your files in those folders, there's no need to do all that. So it's really easy. You're going to go still to File, Import Photos and Video. Once again, you're going to see the blank screen with your source and your where it's going. It's automatically selecting for me the SD card, but this time I don't want the SD card. I'm going to go down to where I keep all my pictures in my Bruvage folder. And let's just pretend for a minute that this is your OneDrive. And inside of it, you have already made your All Images, and they're already in your workflow folder, or they're all just sitting in All Images. So if you clicked on that, and if I turn on Include All Subfolders, you'll see that all the pictures are there. You don't even have to have this clicked on, because you'll just select the workflow, and you'll see all the pictures. So once you're on the actual folder, you'll see the pictures. If you're not on the actual folder, unless you have Include Subfolders checked, you won't see the pictures in cascaded folders. So let's go ahead and we'd want to import the workflow, or if you don't have the workflow folder, if you're just throwing everything into All Images, which is fine, then you can just select All Images. And you can see right away it is switched from copy to add, because that is the important thing. Now instead of copying the pictures, you're just adding them from a spot where they already exist. So they'll actually move very quickly. You'll see over here the dialog is a little bit different. It doesn't have all the space where it's telling you where it's going. That's because it's already there. So you can still have all the file handling. You can still build smart previews if you want to. You can still apply keywords during import, like ice or river. You gotta spell it right. Or, anything else, class. So, and those will all be searchable, which is why I always say Start doing them early because it's hard to go and add them later. Once you get those done, you just say import, and it will bring those into Lightroom. Because Lightroom does not store your photographs. Lightroom is just like a table of contents that points to your photographs wherever they are. So if you copied the catalog, which you can see up here, this is my catalog, CBRUV LR catalog 10/23/20 version 13. I've been doing this for a minute. This catalog does not have any of my pictures in it. It only has pointers to the files that exist on my computer. So if I moved my catalog file, I would also need to move my pictures. So my JPEGs, my RAWs, all that stuff, it's not included in the catalog. So that's how you import from folders that are already existing in your OneDrive. And next we're going to look at the library. Okay, we're in the library. What does that mean? So up in Lightroom, you have different modules. You have the library module, you have the develop module, you have the map module, you have the book module, the slideshow. So the most important ones are the library and the develop. Map will show you kind of like where your picture was taken, which I never use. Book and slideshow and print. And web, those are all delivery methods, but I never use Lightroom for those things. I really only use Lightroom for the library module and the develop module. So once you've imported things, you're going to be in your library module. We're going to talk a little bit about what generally Lightroom looks like now. You have this grid view. This is where all your pictures are. You can take this thumbnail slider and make these are called thumbnails each because they're small thumbnail sized images. That's a holdover from graphic design back in the day. But you can make them big, you can make them small. If you want to see a lot on your screen, or you want to see more detail. The library view is the fastest way to view your pictures. Once you go into the develop module, it looks at your pictures a little more closely, so they actually take a little bit longer to load. You can select your pictures just by clicking on them, or you can use the keyboard's arrow keys on your keyboard, move it around. If you hit spacebar, it will magnify your picture. And what you'll see over here on the left side, which is all of this is about how to manage your pictures, and this is about the picture itself. You have a navigator, and when I hit spacebar, I'm gonna hit it again. You'll see it goes over to this 100%, back to fit, back to 100%, back to fit. It'll cycle between the last two magnifications that you've used. And so if you were on 200% before, it'll cycle back between 200 and fit. Fit just means it fits the screen, and you'll see how that works as we go along. Over here you have a catalog, which is this is the catalog I'm using. It shows you all the pictures you have in it, all the synced photographs. This won't be very detailed for you guys yet because your catalog is brand new. We call a catalog, the catalog is basically the Lightroom file structure. It's what Lightroom makes. So when you import pictures, it is added to the catalog. You have folders, which act just like folders on your computer, which in fact they are the folders on your computer. It has to be imported like we did, or they won't show up. But once they are, they appear in Lightroom, but they're no different from your folders anywhere else. You also have collections, and collections are very powerful. So I have a bunch of different collections I've made over the years. One smart collection I have is just my cats. So this is just Ramona. So I have a keyword set up that it just finds cat, kittens, Ramona, and just adds them right here. So instantly I don't have to do anything. When I import a picture, if it's of Ramona, I just write Ramona on it, and it goes right to the smart collection. But you can group any collection by different methods. So if you click right here, new collection, to create a collection, you would name it new collection, new collection. You can include selected pictures. You can include collection. You can set as target collection. And once you do that, what did I name it? Oh, it's down here. New collection. It's got nothing in it. But if you go back to your pictures that you just imported, oh, that's not what we imported. We imported these. Say you like this one and this one. You can actually go ahead and find the new collection. I get to 0. You can just drag and drop these right in the new collection. And now you can see how this is a way to organize your pictures in a different way other than folders. So it doesn't create a copy. It doesn't add any data. Well, just like a minuscule amount of data. But it doesn't create a new picture. It just says, now these pictures are in this collection. So maybe if you have a bunch of pictures that are related in some way, like all the pictures of my cat Ramona, they can go into a collection, and that way you can quickly and easily find them. Like over the years, I'm working on a project called Car Portraits, and I have all of these collection sets for car portraits. These are scattered across different folders. I've shot these over many years, but I'm able to put them all together, and I can find them all very quickly this way. So that's how collections work. We're gonna go ahead and twirl these all up. That's what I call it when I think that's what everyone calls it. When you hit the triangle. Whoops. We'll go back to our folder workflow. So we see all our pictures. You can see one at a time. You can compare 2 pictures. You select the proper window by clicking on it. You can see a little white line appears. Select or the candidate. So if you go into candidate and you want to change it, boom, it's a new candidate. Boom, it's a new candidate. If you go over to the select, boom, it's a new select. So this is just a way to compare pictures. I use it a lot if I'm trying to see if they're related color-wise, or anything really. Like, it's mostly about color for me, but it's color of the. But if you want to see if pictures go together, then you're going to want to use survey view, where you click it and you can see all these pictures, and you can see if you had like a bunch of pictures, this will reduce the amount that you can see at a time. So it's pretty powerful in that way. Another thing to note is that in Lightroom, before we get to the other side here, these little buttons, these little triangles on the side, if you click them, it'll take away the panel that's on that side of the screen. And so remember when I was talking about fitting, if you go back to fit, make sure you're on fit by hitting your space bar, and it should be white. And once you expand it, the image will always fit into the screen. It'll fit into the view. So you'll never accidentally crop it as you're looking at it. Whereas if you have it set to view at 100%, you'll see it doesn't change. The image doesn't change. It just stays at 100%, which is exactly what you want, right? Because you want to look at it 100% if you have it set to 100%. So we'll go back. We'll turn back all our panes on. Go back to fit. And over here, we have our histogram. If you don't know what a histogram is, now's a good time to learn. The histogram from the left to the right shows darkness to brightness. It's a pretty simple tool. You can see in this version of a histogram, you can see that there's white, which is luminance. You can see there's green, which is the green channel. Surprise, surprise. You can see red, which is the red channel, and blue, which is the blue channel, because all our pictures are made of RGB, right? So it's showing all those differences. You can always make things bigger by hovering over the borders. Sometimes I'll shrink my things up like that. But I just want to show you how big you can make that histogram if you want to. And it shows you what your ISO was on your image, the focal length that you shot it at, the f-stop, the aperture that you shot it at, and your shutter speed. These are all just right there on the histogram. They'll always be there. You have a quick develop module under here, which I almost never use. If you are making real quick exposure adjustments, you just kind of can click around. I much prefer to do all my adjustments in the develop module. Or yeah, develop module. You can see all the keywords. Excuse me. You can see all the keywords we've added when we brought them in, but you can still add new keywords, such as amazing. And then you'll be able to search by amazing. Here's where you would add keywords if you hadn't already, but maybe you think that maybe one of them has specific things that are unique about it. Maybe this is very white or cracked. You can build out your keywords so much that there's no reason not to. And as you start to gather like tens of thousands of pictures, the keywording will save you every time. Underneath keywording, you have keyword lists. This is just showing all the keywords that I've ever created. So there's a lot. And then you see your metadata. The metadata shows all of the technical details about a photograph. So your dimensions, if you had cropped it, it would show the crop dimensions, the date that it was shot at, the exposure, the focal length. It's saying it's 70 millimeters. You can see up here, it's also 70 millimeters, the f10, the ISO. All this is duplicated down here. You have a lot of different information that is just real technical photography stuff, and you don't have to know it all. You can even see what the camera was, the model number, the type of lens, all that stuff. The other thing that I do in the library module is rate. So when you first bring pictures into Lightroom, you're going to want to look through them and say, well, which one do I like? Which one do I not like? Maybe in your assignment, you only have to turn in 24, but maybe you shot 50, maybe you shot 36. You can go through here and cull them, is what we call it. So using the arrow keys, I'm going to move around. The way I like to do this is I hit 1, and that gives me a 1-star rating. You can see it right here. 1 star to me means anything that's decent, anything that's okay, just borderline okay, like it's fine. That means it's the people are smiling, maybe people's eyes are open. Basically, the general idea of the picture is okay. If I did not like the picture, if I thought that it did not meet those criteria, then I would hit X. And you can see now it set it as rejected. And a rejection flag can be set for deletion. So later on you can go up to photos and you can say delete rejected photos. And that'll just delete everything you said is rejected. And that way you don't have to go through the process of deleting pictures off of Lightroom, because every time you do it, it's going to ask you whether you want to delete the picture from Lightroom or from your computer completely, and you got to make that decision. But if you say delete rejected photos, you can do it all at once, and then you can choose like, I just want to remove it from Lightroom, or I want to remove it completely from the disk and it be gone forever and I never want to see it again. But I like this picture, so I'm going to keep it. I'm going to say cancel. I can just click on this flag to make it go away, and now it's back to unrejected. It feels better. I feel better. Everyone feels better. So we have 1 ratings. I never use a 2. I just skip right to 3. So once I get everything, all these are good. So they would all get the 1. But say I have a one that I feel like is a little bit standout. That's when I'm going to use a 3. And so I use 1 and 3 just to get going. And I really reserve I reserve 5 for a finished image. So once I worked on this picture and it's all done and it's ready to go, then I would maybe graduate it to a 5. But that's how I know that my pictures are done, they're ready to go. You can use a lot of different ways to rate your pictures and organize them in this manner. And I would encourage you to make up your own way. I have a friend where what she does is she sets everything to colors. So she has her ratings, but then say if she's going to get rid of something, she marks it as 6. It's red. She doesn't like it. But then say she likes a picture. I think that's 8. And it's green, so that's a go. Maybe she's hesitant about a picture. No, not 0, not 9, not 5. Got a 5, 6, 7. 7 is yellow. So 8 is green, 7 is yellow, 6 is red on your keyboard, if that's not clear. So then you have these color ratings, and you can see how powerful this could be. You can have combinations of stars, colors, and you can do it with flags. So you can just select the picture and you can say P, and it flags it as a pick. And if you don't like it anymore and you want to get rid of that, you can say U and remove the flag. P, you can also click on a flag to get rid of it. We already saw that X is another version of the flag that rejects it. P, U, X. 6, 7, 8, 9. All different colors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All different stars. So you can see the combinations, all those can be pretty powerful to organize your pictures. And so I would tell you to just get used to them. If you're planning on using Lightroom as your place to put pictures, it would behoove you to become familiar with this and develop some kind of system. And it's a big feature of Lightroom, even though it seems like a really small thing. I feel like it's one of the most important parts of Lightroom. So once you have imported your picture, you have rated your images, you're ready to go in and start developing. And so we're going to do that next. Full disclosure, I just realized that I had set my camera on manual focus, so if that's why my video is a little blurry of myself, that's just, something that happened. Okay, anyway, so now we're back to the develop module. The develop module, well, we're in the library module, and you'll see that I pulled up this truck picture because I really want to use a photograph that you can see me work on. And the ice ones were a little bit too kind of easy. So I'm going to pull up this develop module. I'm going to click on it to go into it. You'll see that everything down here kind of changes. I mean, not that much, but just enough. This changes and that changes. Obviously, your film strip didn't change much at all. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. I don't need it up for now. I get a little bigger picture that way. You can see I have my navigator. I have a thing called snapshots. I have history now. And I have collections. And you'll notice that there's already things that happened in this history. Why is that? Well, it's because I've adjusted this before and it remembers all the things I did, which is pretty cool about Lightroom. But I have returned it to its original state. Let's make sure that it is on its original state completely. And here's a nice little truck. This isn't my truck, so if you're gonna take the license plate and try to figure out who it is, don't. So let's go over the basics of the developing module. You really don't even need this. I usually have it closed so I have the full image. So let's look over here. What do we have? Oh wow, we have another histogram, and you can see darks over here, and now it's telling you blacks, and over here whites. Isn't it nice that it tells you that? So it goes from dark blacks to whites and all the things in between. You have your edit tools, your cropping tools. If you click on those, you'll see it all kind of puts it fills in this space with the cropping module here, or panel, sorry. You have remove panel. You have red eye panel, which I hardly ever use these days, but you might have red eye in your picture. You might need to deal with it. It also can adjust pet eye, which usually shows up as like green or maybe yellow. Different pets are different. And then you have the mask tool, the mask module, which panel, sorry. So anyway, masking is, I think, the second most important thing in Lightroom after you adjust. But we'll start with the adjustment tools, well, the edit tools. You have your basic edits, and we're going to jump into those. So if you're working with a raw picture, which some of you probably are, some of you might have done it on accident, some of you might have done it on purpose, you're going to have this profile here that says maybe camera standard, maybe something else. But when you click this box, you'll get all these choices. You can go to Adobe Color, you can go to Adobe Portrait, but underneath those you'll have these versions with so these are all related to having a Sony camera. So camera clear, camera deep, camera light. My Canon camera has completely different selections, and you'll just have to see what ones are for you under your camera. But these are all different ways of interpreting the basic color off of your sensor, and it's important to know that this is your starting value, because if you change this later on after you've done something, you're changing the starting value, so it will change all of the settings relatively. So it's important to choose the right one, choose one that you like, choose one that feels good. They all do different things. Landscape tends to saturate things, neutrals tends to desaturate things, standard tends to have just a really kind of blocky but not too saturated look. I usually start with Adobe Color, but oftentimes I find myself going down to camera deep in my Sony stuff because it just feels like it's just a little bit more punchy and it's a little bit more vibrant already. The thing about all these color profiles is you could change any one of them to look like any of the other ones. They're just starting points, so don't get too worried about it. So let's just go ahead and start with Adobe Color, because maybe that's what you'd have. Or if you have a JPEG you brought in, it's not going to have any of those. You're going to click on this, it's not going to change anything. You're just going to have, it's just going to say color right there. And that's fine. But JPEGs inherently are not a little, they're a lot less flexible than a RAW. And I'm doing this all on a RAW picture. So you'll see the power of a RAW image and how much information you can have in it. All these adjustments you can still do on a JPEG, but they are your results will be a little different. So the first thing you have is exposure. What is exposure? It's the lightness or brightness of the image, and it's a little bit technically different than just brightness or lightness because it affects the image in a logarithmic way, which we won't get into too much here, but just to know that this is your basic brightness or darkness of the image. And what is it doing over here? What are these numbers? If you remember when I was talking about shutter speed and aperture and ISO, I said, they're all kind of equivalent to like 1 unit of light in photography. And that's what this is doing. These are stops. So it is literally telling you it's minus 1.24 stops. It's as if you change your aperture by 1. It's as if you change your ISO by 1. So all of this is relative to all those numbers too. So you can just adjust this. I usually try to put this in like a happy medium, because if you try to like adjust for the darkest part, you're gonna blow out your highlights. If you try to adjust for the highlights, you might block up your shadows. Something to know about digital photography: when you're shooting RAW, your shadows are much easier to recover than your highlights. So if you shoot something and it looks like this when you in the camera, and your highlights are kind of really bright, and we call that blown out, it's going to be really hard to bring those back just because of the way a camera sensor works. You can also see up in the histogram that it is like a solid wall over here on the side, and it's showing you that is just, it's another word for it is clipping. It's getting, all these are getting cut off. All your highlights are going past this spot, this wall, and so they're kind of disappearing. You can do the same thing in digital audio, and clipping sounds like nasty. It's like the loudest thing a thing could be. Here it's the whitest a thing can be, the brightest it can be. So you want to make sure that you don't expose like that in camera. You want to get something a little bit closer to this, but you can adjust it obviously this way. I'm going to show you a technique that I like to do where I preserve my highlights. So I'm just kind of bringing this down to where my highlights don't seem like they're blown. And it's kind of crazy because you're going to be like, okay, like this really only works with raw pictures, so think about it that way. But it's just going to be a way I'm going to show you how all this stuff works. But now I'm going to see, I can kind of hover over these highlighted parts, and you can see over here, it's giving me the red, it's hard to say, but the red, green, and blue output of them. If these were at 100, it's hard to get them there. But if they're like 90, once they're like that, they're gone. They're as bright as possible. And once R, G, and B are each 100, then it's pure white, because they all add together to be. That's how color is made, right? In this world. So I'm going to set it there. You have your highlight controls, which you could pull down your highlights even more if you wanted to. It can start to look, let's pull this up for a second. It can start to look pretty unreal, I think. This is kind of like the highlights look almost pretend because they're kind of too low now. But you can pull them down tastefully. You can adjust your shadows. Your whites, which are different than your highlights. The whites are your brightest part of your picture. And your blacks are your darkest part of your picture, where your shadows are kind of just above the darkness of the blacks. So there we've kind of adjusted this image to a sort of tasteful picture. It looks okay. I think the highlights are still a little bit too pulled down, but that's okay. I want you to notice one thing about when I adjust these. So when I grab the highlights, if you look up at the histogram, you'll see that this bar appears, and you'll see it says highlights over there. The same thing happens if I grab shadows. You'll see that this bar appears and it says shadows. And it happens when I hover over the histogram too. Same thing with whites. They're at the end. Same thing with blacks. It's hard to see, but they're at the end over here. Now there's a completely different way to adjust exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks, and that's directly on the histogram. You can just hover over the part of the histogram. You get this little double arrow, and then you can pull it or push it with your mouse one way or the other while you're clicking and dragging. And that's a super fast way to know like exactly what part of the image you're working with. And sometimes it feels to me like easier than clicking on these little tiny buttons. So that is how the basic module works up there. You have these other elements, texture, clarity, and dehaze. What these technically are is micro adjustments on contrast, but they affect the overall appearance of the image in subtle ways. I'm going to zoom in, and you can see that we're at 100% here. So this is as detailed as my picture is. And I'm focusing on the part that I focused on when I took this picture, which I knew was this headlight. So let's adjust the texture first. As you push it up, you'll see that it starts to get a little grittier. If I push it down, you'll see that it does the opposite. It becomes kind of soft. Grittier, softer, grittier, softer. If you double click on one of the names on any of these, it'll return it to its original values of 0. Clarity. It's sort of grittier again, but it's a broader kind of adjustment of contrast. So nothing, everything. Nothing, everything. And compare that to nothing on texture and everything on texture. It's just, texture is just a little subtler, like it works on the smaller details. Dehaze is interesting. It's designed to like cut through the like hazy atmosphere and it's a very strong adjustment, and it adds a bit of a blue cast because it's sort of trying to like go through like morning fog or something. I never really use them on the whole thing, but it's good to know what they do, right? Now here you go down to vibrance and saturation. These are both ways that affect color. You're probably more familiar with the term saturation. If you have a saturated color, it's more vivid. It is, you might describe it as brighter. But let's drag the slider and see what happens. As you pull saturation up, you can see like these oranges get sort of electric. This green starts glowing. Saturation will adjust all colors to the same intensity. It'll like pull all colors up at the same time is what that means. So like all your reds, all your greens, all your blues, it'll adjust them all equally at the same time. Whereas vibrance is a form of saturation that adjusts the vividness of colors while trying to preserve skin tones. So it's still, you can see on this thing, it still kind of does it, but it doesn't affect the greens as much. And the oranges kind of like fall behind a little bit. Whereas at the same place, 43 in saturation, look at the oranges and greens. They're already pretty like electric, right? So if you're trying to adjust colors like a person's shirt or something, you're going to want to use saturation because it's going to help preserve the skin tones. And I tend to use vibrance instead of saturation a lot because it tends to work better with just the way our eye sees things. Like our eye wants to see greens a lot, and so when they get vivid, they start to feel unnatural. Under the basic, we have the tone curve. Tone curves kind of do all of the same things that basic does up here. Exposure, contrast, highlight, shadows. But it does it with a little line graph. So if you click on this eye right now, you'll see it'll turn off the basic adjustments. You'll see what it was when you started the image. And if you hold down Alt when you click it, oh, can you not turn off? Well, it works on every other panel. If you hold down Alt when you click this one, it'll turn it completely off. Now you have an eye that's crossed out. I guess you can't do that on the basics. So, you know, when you're teaching, you always learn something new. So I am just going to go and reset the image. So we're back to the original image because I want to show you how, I'm going to go ahead and change this to Adobe, show you how tone curves work. You'll see on the tone curve that you have this shadow here, this dark part, and it looks like, you know, really similar to this shape up here because it's the same. It's the same thing. This is basically the histogram. And this is how much you're going to adjust the darks or the whites. And that's kind of confusing at first, but here's how it works. If you just look at it. If I grab the dark part and I lift up, you'll see the blacks slowly become white. It's completely white at the top. If I grab this and I drag it this way, you'll see everything starts to negative. It completely swaps the color. Because this is like inverting the image. So you can also create points on this. You click here, you're in the shadows. You are brightening your shadows. You click here, you're brightening the highlights more. You can see it can quickly get really weird because when you're pulling it down, it's starting to go into that negative territory. because if you dragged this way, it turns black, but if you lift this up, you get a negative image. You get this weird image that you would get on film or something. So Control Z to undo that. The point is, on curves, you can adjust it by making a curve. And it's a pretty powerful tool because it's not as linear as these basic tools. Whereas you can see, like when I'm adjusting this, it still bends back down and preserves my highlights. And if I set another point, I can kind of adjust those even more and preserve them even better. So that's how the curve tool works. I'm gonna go ahead and turn it off on for now, using that technique I said, holding down my Alt key, which is something else on Mac. It's this. I'm gonna go back up to my basics and I'm gonna adjust this real fast. I just want it to look decent. Get the shadows, preserve those whites. I usually try to adjust my blacks so they're not clipping at all, and you can tell that what's clipping by this little arrow up here, this little triangle. If the blacks are clipping, it turns white, and as you drag it back, you can see which channels clip. So that's the red, blue, and then nothing. Same thing on highlights. You can see the clipping on the highlights over here. If I went up, it turns white. As I come back, I am just now right there, just not clipping any highlights, which still looks pretty kind of gross, but so I'm going to bring it back even further. Okay, so that's kind of basic adjustment. You down to color mixer. This affects specific colors. You can grab your reds, drag them around. You can grab your oranges and drag them around. You can see the car really responds to that. I'm in the saturation mode, so you can go to luminance, hue, and adjust all these in that way. Saturation obviously adjusts the saturation just like that slider, but it's on the specific color. Let's return these to 0. Luminance is going to affect the value, relative brightness of each of those colors. So I want all my reds to go dark. You can see they start to pull down. I want my oranges to go dark. You can see them start to pull down. It won't bring them all the way to black, but it'll significantly darken them. You can raise the brightness of them too. It's a pretty powerful tool. Under hue, you can actually shift the color a little bit. So you can take your reds and shift them towards yellow or orange. You can take your orange and shift them towards yellow. You can take your yellows and shift them towards green, or shift them vice versa towards orange. You can take your aquas and shift them towards blue or back towards green. I don't think there's a lot of purples in here. You can also grab this device right here. This little double arrowed little thing, and if you hover and click on a part of the image and then drag up or down with your mouse, it will change the relative colors associated with that. So that becomes a pretty powerful way to adjust just a real specific part of your picture. Obviously, this can go crazy real fast. You know, I just want to get rid of those, and I want to leave the trees green. You can do a lot real quick. Color mixer is a powerful place. Color grading is where you're going to adjust shadows, highlights, and midtones color separately. It's just another nuanced way to deal with lightness and brightness and color. On the bottom, you have the brightness of that. So this is the midtones. You have the brightness of the highlights. You have the brightness and darkness of the shadows. And you have the colors of just the shadows. You have the colors of just the midtones. You have the colors of just the highlights. You can jump to a bigger version of each one of those by clicking on these. You can jump back to the triple version where it shows all of them by clicking on that. And you can change how they blend with each other and the balance between the two or all three of them here. So it's pretty powerful tool too. Detail. This affects the relative sharpness. You can never really add sharpness to an image. You can only affect the contrast of it. But this does a really good job of faking it. Just like up here when we saw in the basic module, we saw texture and clarity and dehaze, affected contrast. This does it in a different way. It's more suited to make the image appear sharp overall. And there's some tricks to it. So it'll automatically have some sharpening applied if you're in RAW. If you're in JPEG, it won't. But you can grab this and adjust it. Let's jump into 100% to see the effect. And you can start to see that with no sharpening, this is what comes off your sensor. It's not exactly not sharp, but it's a tiny little bit less detailed. So when you grab this amount and you pull it up, you can see that it starts to pull out the detail in all the little, all the pixels, all the grains, basically any edge that it can find. And it'll find edges everywhere. It'll find edges down to the pixel. So it can get kind of nasty looking, but there's ways to get around that. The first thing, I'm going to leave this cranked up so that you can see the difference. The first is this radius. The radius tells it kind of like how big of an area is it going to adjust. So it's adding contrast to a larger area. The higher this number is. So that's why things start to look kind of thick and cartoony. You can see it on the edge of this leaf in particular. As it goes down, you see it less and less. Like this line gets really thick. This line gets really thick. It gets kind of gross, right? But they work together. And so you can adjust this radius and this sharpening to kind of give you different values. If you hold down Alt when you adjust radius, you can start to see how it's really working. It's showing you exactly how powerful it's going to be. You can hold down Alt when you're doing sharpen the amount too, and it shows you a grayscale, so you can kind of see it without color and helps you visualize it. Alt on all these gives you a little bit more of a detailed look at what it's doing. Alt under detail now is going to show you like how much of an effect these two things are having. And then the final one is masking. And masking sort of from light, these are all dark to light. You can see like it's darker over here and light over here. This works from highlights to shadows, and it masks out what you don't have selected. So right here, it's the whole image. It's the brightness is full scale, so everything. As you pull this down, you can start to see that it's only affecting certain parts of the image. And if we crank these two things up, you can see it's really nasty, but as we adjust this masking tool, and if we went all the way over here, you see it's only going to affect like these lines. As I'm holding down my Alt key, you can see that the white parts are what would be affected, and the black parts will be unaffected. And you can see there's no sharpening in here, and it's completely black. But the edges are highly affected. So sharpening is something that you want to do just tastefully. Usually you don't really need to touch it, but it's important to know how it works in Lightroom. Lens correction. So a lot of times between between bright edges and dark edges, you'll end up with this slight purpleness that's appearing, and this is how you correct it. You would grab this and drag it around. You can also go for a profile. These are all called chromatic aberrations. And you can choose the lens that you have on, and it will apply adjustments for that lens. This image is shot with a pretty high caliber lens, so there's not a lot of color fringing. But this is where you would correct that if you see it. This is also where you can adjust the amount of vignetting in the whole image. If you see the corners, you can see them getting brighter or lighter, the edges and corners, and over here it gets brighter and lighter. You can adjust where the midpoint of that vignetting begins or ends. and that's a technical thing. Lots of lenses will be darker towards the corners and the edges just because of the fall off of light. And so lens corrections will adjust for that, but you can do it manually yourself here. You have the power to transform your image in different ways. You can adjust your vertical lines. You can adjust your horizontal lines. You can rotate. You can adjust your aspect to squeeze it lengthwise or height-wise. You can do a scale adjustment. You can just translate it on the x-axis, and you can translate it on the y-axis. Those are all things you might want to do if you're trying to, say you shot this picture and maybe you want the straight lines to be a little more vertical, maybe you tilted it or something. You can adjust all that right in here. And then you can say constrain crop, and it will get rid of all the extra bits of like problems like this thing, this little whiteness that you don't want to have. Boom, you'll just get rid of it. So that's just a way to quickly correct for distortion, other types of distortion, especially if you're like, maybe when you fire the camera, you tilted your shot a little bit, or maybe it's tilted a little bit so you have a little bit of keystoning or something. This is where you'd correct for that. Lens blur is a new tool. That's an AI tool that I never really used. It's just a way to automatically make it look like you shot it with a much larger aperture so that the background blurs out. You have effects, where this is another vignetting. This is the less technical vignetting, whereas in the lens correction, it's correcting for the actual lens issues. This is just artistic. So you can take this and adjust the vignetting down or up. Like I said before, you can adjust the midpoint. Here you can adjust the roundness of that vignette. You can adjust the feathering to make it very, very sharp or very, very diffuse. I don't mind a little bit of vignetting. Honestly, I think it helps the eye from falling off sometimes. So I do tend to add just a touch of vignetting. You can also change how it works right here, color priority, paint overlay. These just kind of subtly shift how the black vignette interacts with the colors of the photograph. Underneath that, you have grain. You can add a grain texture that looks more like film. So if I jump in here, you can see that I've added a ton of grain. I can take it all out. You know, this is for the film lovers out there. It just emulates the look of film, and you can adjust the size of the grain, the roughness of the grain. You can make it pretty nasty. I tend to not add grain usually, especially if it's going to go online. It just makes it harder to compress. Under here, the last one is calibration. And this really only applies if you're shooting raw. You have different versions of the process that it uses to demosaic your image, which we'll talk about later in other lessons. But you know, it's been going. I've been using Lightroom since version 1, so that's how old I am. It also lets you adjust your shadow tint in different ways, which can be kind of powerful and cool. If you really just need another way to adjust color, it's down here. So those are all the ways that you can adjust your image in the develop module and the basic tools. So now we're going to look at cropping and masking, which I think are pretty powerful. So in the cropping, because we'd already adjusted this picture, let's go back to this and reset the whole image. When you go to the cropping, you're going to see all these lines on your picture. And you're like, what are those? These are just guides to help you. If you hold down O, or not hold it down, if you press O, it'll like cycle through these. Boom, boom. Different ways of helping you look at your picture while you're cropping it. There's no right one, there's just the one that you need. If you're on this guy, which is like the golden mean spiral, and you hold down Shift and O, it'll flip it around. These are just guides, and when we talk about composition, they'll make a little more sense. Over here, you can adjust the aspect ratio. You can say keep it as original. You can say make it a square 1:1, 4:5, 5:7. You're probably familiar with these terms. They're all just photo sizes, and they're based on prints and sensor sizes and all that stuff. You can also just say custom and make it however you want. Oh, I tried to grab it here and I couldn't move it, and that's because this is locked. So when I click this to unlock it, now I can make it any shape I want to. Now if I had it at a really weird shape, really untraditional shape, and I went here and I said let's make it a 5:7, it'll take that value and just kind of make a 5:7 out of it. You grab it, move it around, click and drag. That's cropping. Under here you have the remove tool. This can be kind of powerful, honestly. This is maybe not the best picture to show you on, but I'm gonna jump in here and adjust this. Go down to 100, holding down spacebar to move around as I click and drag. You can see that I have a little target, and when I'm scrolling my mouse wheel to adjust the size of it, you can also use the bracket keys to make it bigger and smaller. You can see the sizes adjusting as I do that. And then you can adjust the feather. That's why there's two circles. The middle part is the solid, always solid image. The outer part is the feather that would be sort of diffuse and semi-transparent. Say you want to remove these little spots from this piece of wood up here. Anytime you're going to remove something from a photograph, like a dust spot or a light speckle or a cup on the ground, you're going to want to make sure that this is about the size of the thing. If you make it too big, you're going to affect more of the image than you want to. So bring it down, make it a decent size. What you can see is I was confused because at first the opacity didn't work, and then I'm going to move this over, and you can see that now it's gone completely. And what it's doing is it's selecting from the image elsewhere to try to mask it. And so you want to try to make it select from something that looks kind of like it works. On the wood grain, it's really hard to match that pattern. So I would probably do this another way. But that's how it works, basically. Let's go back to edit. Oh, sorry. To red eye correction. And red eye is something I never use. Like I said, it's for pets and humans. So pet eye is more like a green eye. Humans have red eyes, and that happens when the light comes too direct at you and it bounces off the back of your eye, and all the blood vessels get lit up. So if you need it, it's there. Here's the other powerful part of Lightroom: masking. Let's go back. Let's turn our crop off. Let's return it to original. It's a full scale image now. Go back here. Do you remember when I said if I was doing this, if I was adjusting this in my basic mode, I would just kind of pull down the exposure until I felt like my highlights were good? This is one way you can do that. And then you can go into the masking tool and you can choose a mask. And what masks do is they allow you to affect specific parts of the image. So you have objects, which we're not going to do just yet. Brush, which is just like we were showing you under the remove tool. You have a brush, and I'm scrolling or using the brackets to increase the size. If I hold down shift and bracket, it'll increase the feather or decrease the feather. I can paint on there by clicking and dragging, and you start to see that this red mask is made. And what does that do? That means it's going to affect wherever it's red. So now you have all these tools underneath. You have a mask one, and all these tools are pretty much identical to what you see up here in the edit. I can adjust just that part of the image, and you can kind of see how powerful that is. I can make it all black. I can make it super bright. And I can add to the mask by just feathering it out. And you can see you can sort of pretty quickly get to a point where we did before, where you're not struggling with those these highlights over here, because now they're not being affected by the adjustment anymore. So you can make things, you can do pretty powerful things with a mask. Another way of masking this, oh, well, let's show you this. So if you right click on this, you can delete the mask. It'll go back right back to normal, how it was at the beginning. Linear gradient mask, you click and drag, and it will create this type of mask, which covers the whole image, and it's very smooth. So I can adjust this as I see fit. If you grab here, it's going to move the center. Let's get rid of that one. You can do a radial gradient. Click and drag out, it just makes a circle. If you hold down Shift, it'll keep it as a circle. If you don't hold down Shift, you can make all the different shapes of ellipses. If you hold down Spacebar and Shift, sorry, that's just a Photoshop thing, I guess. Hold down Shift, circle. And then you can adjust within that circle or the ellipse. Let's get rid of that guy. You can adjust, you can make a mask by color range. So I just want to adjust just my darkest values here. You can see I selected that. Now it'll start to adjust those. That can get really weird really fast, but it can create some interesting effects. So delete that. Within that range, you can also do a luminance range. So just the brightest things. Or just the darkest things. So very similar to the other range. You can adjust the range here. This is like the maximum output of it. This is kind of the center. This is all like feathering. Let's go ahead and get rid of these. And we'll show you one of the most powerful masking tools in Photoshop is you can grab objects, but this is the same, it works up here the same way. If you click subject, it'll try to detect the subject in your photograph. And it thinks just the front of my car is the subject. This works a lot better with like people and faces and objects that are defined really well. If this tree wasn't here, I think you would do a much better job at grabbing the whole car. But it creates a very specific mask for that thing, and it does it very, very quickly, which is amazing. So once you have that mask done, it didn't grab the whole car, so I can go ahead and add to that mask. I can go down here and click the plus or the minus. The plus would add, and I get to select the tool I'm going to add it with, grab a brush, and I can start just painting back in. So I can start with a really specific mask, you know, adjust the size with the brackets, and I can just add to it, and I can really quickly create a really complicated selection. Another thing to know about masking, let's get rid of this real quick. Delete it. Say I'm using my brush and I want to keep my lines straight for any reason. Maybe I want to follow just the edge of this car. So let's tighten this up and make my feather very small. I can click, hold down Shift, and click again, and it makes a straight line. Straight line, straight line. And you can see it didn't follow it perfectly, but by giving me that straight line, I can fill in areas very, very quickly. I can create masks that are very, very straight, obviously. It's just another way to manipulate masks in Lightroom, and it's a good one to know. You can also delete from a mask or take away from a mask with this little minus icon. Do that brush. So it was sticky there. Sometimes Lightroom gets sticky and doesn't want to show me my brush, and so I have to click and hit the space bar in order to get it back. But usually it comes back. If it doesn't come back, you have to restart Lightroom down in order to get the brush to show up. So I'm still on the minus. I'm subtracting from this. You can see that it says minus in the middle, and I'm going to use my click and my shift to erase. Now if I just do it in different ways, then I can sort of, different spots are relatively straight, and so I can use it to do things really quick. And that way you can start to like make once again a complicated mask pretty quickly. So that's masking in Photoshop, or not Photoshop. I keep saying Photoshop. It's Lightroom. So you have all the tools that you did underneath the adjust or the edit button. You have a curve adjustment that you can do in here. You can add all the effects in here, and you can sharpen things specifically. So this is where I use these textures and these clarities. I use them in masks a lot of time just to bring focus to a singular point of the image. And you can obviously adjust, like it's just adjusting the window now with your curves. So we've gone over the edit, the cropping, the remove tool, and the masking tool in Lightroom. The last thing that we need to talk about is how to get your picture out of Lightroom and to everywhere else so people can see it. Once you get your picture to where you'd like it to be, it's all edited, you've done all your adjustments, you've done all your crops, and you're ready to get it out of Lightroom. Because these images only exist like this in Lightroom, because Lightroom, like I said, it doesn't actually contain your pictures, it just contains directions to your pictures and recipes for how to make them look the way they look. So in order to get this out of Lightroom as an image itself that looks like this, we have to export it. So how do you export it? Well, you go to File and Export. It's going to pull up this dialog. On the left, you're going to see all the presets that you could use. You're going to see Export to Hard Drive. You can send it to all kinds of things. I've never tried to export to email. I don't know what that would do. I haven't done CD or DVD either. So the only one I know anything about is hard drive. We're going to go to Export to, and this is another Export to. This is now it's the more specific location. So, as it says. So now we're going to choose the folder. You just select the Choose button. And it's going to pull up all your folders and files on your computer. You're going to go to where you want to put it. Probably you want to put it in your OneDrive. And so for us, I would go, Photos. My OneDrive is my 2025 folder. And I would go into the assignment that you're trying to export them for. You've already made the file, the folder. Workflow. If you haven't made the folder already, you can just make the folder now by doing this. So when you say choose, go back to your, like, let's pretend this is your OneDrive. My 2025 is your OneDrive, and you say select that folder. And then you would say put in a subfolder, and you would name it assignment, and spell it right probably. And so when you do this now, it will export your image or set of images, and it will put them in a subfolder named whatever you choose. So this way you could export it straight to your assignment folders and just export the picture and export, and it will make the folder called workflow in that assignments folder for you. And then you just go ahead and say, oh, sorry, gotta tell you all this stuff. So down here under, I would keep the file name the same because you already changed the name. It's not a video, so we don't need any of that. The file setting should be a JPEG. I would not do anything more than 90 or 80%. That's good enough for a JPEG. It's going to look great. Your color space, you can keep it at sRGB, because sRGB is the default color space for most things. We'll get into that in future episodes. Looks like I've been making my things 50% for some reason, so I'm gonna check that off. You want a full scale image, and then you don't need to change any sharpening. You can include or exclude all your metadata at this point. I always keep all my metadata. This is where you could add a watermark if you want to protect your files. You could say after export, you could open it in Photoshop or any other application. But for us, we just want to export it, and we just want to stick it in that folder that's named for the assignment. And so, boom. It's going to say export, it's going to go, and then we'll go ahead and check it. Rows, rubbish photos. We're going to see that it's in my OneDrive folder. We're going to see that it's in here, and it's underneath. It made a folder called assignments, and it stuck it right in there. So that's how you export your pictures and get them into the folder. If you just already had your workflow your assignment folder named for workflow or whatever assignment it was, you would just say export. You would not turn on the put in subfolder. You would just find that assignment folder, which is workflow maybe. This time around it is. You would select the folder, and you'll see it show up, and it'll show the path. OneDrive, workflow, and you say export. It'll export it. And you'll see that's in there now. So we've covered how to import your files, select the best ones in the library module, adjust them in the develop module, and then export them using the export function in Lightroom. If you have any questions, please reach out. Otherwise, that's the lesson. Thanks.